Good evening and welcome to the July regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners. Mr. Byrne, we did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss several legal matters. Mr. Byrne, would you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelia? Here. Mr. Oliva?
Here.
Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. McCabe?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here.
Mr. Quinn?
Here.
Dr. Hart?
Here. Chief, could you lead us in the roll?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. President, may I make a suggestion? I ask that we all stand and offer a moment of silence for the firefighter that was lost in Penn Wind last week, our neighboring township, fellow firefighter, and we provide mutual assistance there in honor of his ultimate sacrifice. That we offer this moment of silence. Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is the Citizens Forum, 20 minutes for registered speakers and 20 minutes on agenda items. The first is a letter from the Haverford Township Shade Tree Commission. States it is the stated goal of the township that there should be no net loss of trees within the boundaries of the township. To help meet this goal, it is the recommendation of the Shade Tree Commission that the township institute a tree replacement plan for trees that are removed from township property. It is our recommendation that the trees be replaced in accordance with the replacement formula for land development and construction in Township Code 170-8. In addition, we recommend that the township keep a record of the date, tree size, and species of the trees removed and the replacement trees planted. And the next speaker is John Ryan.
Good evening, John Ryan, 534 Cathmere Road. I'm coming tonight to speak about the tax assessment, which I know is a big issue with everybody with the school board recently, even though that the school board has little to do with it. It's basically an issue of the county doing a reassessment, which was ordered in 2017, took 3 years to complete for over $6 million, and was done pretty poorly. The Uniformity Tax Code of Pennsylvania basically says that within a taxing district, that property taxes should be uniform. Our property taxes are not uniform. Our property taxes were supposed to be done under the reassessment that looked at the sales. They definitely didn't look at the sales. I know some of you can sit up on that board and know that your properties were sold for way more than what you're assessed for right now. Many of the properties in this township right now have been underassessed with the recent property assessment, and I'm hearing from hundreds of people now, and it likely will be thousands by the end of this week, that have basically been overassessed. These are the people that are screaming out right now and basically telling me that they can't afford to live in their property anymore. And our assessment, done by Tyler, will be in a vicious loop again. Once again, once these assessments have been tested by taxation and the time of taxation, there will be lawsuits. And a judge will look at the data because the county didn't look at the data. I have our entire township on a spreadsheet that I'm happy to share with anybody, down to the ward. You can look at your neighbors. We're in a vicious loop where people are told to appeal their own property tax. The problem is they don't know their neighbor's property tax. When they go into it, they hire a lawyer who bills billable hours, and you guys know because I know a lawyer approached you guys to ask basically for you to go after certain people that were underassessed. That was a paltry number of people. That was people that bought properties in 2019. It didn't look at the people that bought properties in 2017, 16, 15, 14, 2010. This came about because the county mishandled this for years. New development was assessed at 90% of its value, no matter what. And then they were told to go back and appeal this. They went back and appealed this and were given a common level ratio that was made up of a ratio of this county. There's no way that a home in Chester has the same ratio as a home in Radnor. It just made no sense. So for many, many years, we overtaxed new development. We overtaxed the honest people that actually pulled permits to do their work. And when I say pull permits, I mean all of the permits, not just a kitchen renovation where they gut the entire house, do the electric, do the HVAC. I've already started working with this with Joe recently, basically calling out people. I see it every day as a realtor. I pull up the properties for sale. I look at the disclosures. The disclosures say how wonderful the house is, it's completely renovated, and then asks if permits are pulled. Nope. Part of how properties are assessed is the responsibility of the township to go back to the county and tell them what has been done. Well, how's the county supposed to go back to how's the county supposed to come back to the township with a new assessment for these properties when they don't even know that the work's been done? And what happens then is that it's not just some lucky individual that cheated the school or cheated the township. These people cheat their neighbors. It's one piece of pie where we divide our property values by the budget. That's how a millage rate comes up. Everybody that thinks that you can raise the millage or lower the millage, depending upon that, it's a simple math formula. Everybody that was surprised in the last month didn't take the time to pull down the PDF from the county, put it in a spreadsheet, and know what the millage was. I knew last June, not this past June, June of 2020, because the data was there. Anybody that decided to do the math would know it. What's our solution? I don't know. I spent a lot of time today reading basically 120 some pages of state law and looking at it, and I know that it's the county's responsibility to do an assessment, but at the same time, is it our responsibility to use that assessment? Maybe we should have our own assessment. We have 20,000 properties. At this point, we could take the county's assessment and pay the paltry sum that the county taxes. But the real sum and the real anger that's in the township, and it's only from a third of the population who had their taxes go up. There's a third of these people that basically are looking at the same taxes, and there's a third of people smiling like the Cheshire Cat because somehow their taxes went down. And that's wrong. We have made one of our problems worse, and we have to find a solution. I asked the school board about it last Thursday night, and I had a busy weekend. I didn't realize this meeting was till today. But when I did realize this meeting was today, I sat down and did my research again. And basically, I'm looking for not suing for individual taxes, but suing for our entire township. It wouldn't cost us $6 million to figure out what our 20,000 properties are worth. And at that point, we're the taxing authority. We're the authority that levies the municipal tax. We're the authority, the school board, that levies the school board tax. Sorry, the county did a lousy job. The county has an assessment office. The more I read today, the more I got angrier. Because quite honestly, we didn't have to spend $6 million. John Van Zeltz and 20-some people in his office should have done this assessment. And it shouldn't have been that hard. And the thing I look at time and time again is our public records aren't even correct. I could pull up the 50 properties that are for sale in Havertown right now and show you that what's for sale and what's in our public records don't match. Excuse me. I'm a little worked up about this, and I really want to say that I think it's in our hands to start looking at a solution. We keep on being told it can't happen. Can't is nothing more than an anagram for certainly I'm not trying. This is in our hands. We shouldn't be levying an unfair tax, and it's only a matter of time before there's another lawsuit. The lawsuit will go before a judge. It'll take a year and a half, and then hopefully we're not ordering a 3 to 4 year assessment to be redone at a ridiculous amount of money. I think it's something that you guys should be talking about as far as us looking into adopting our own assessment, taking the bull by the horns, basically looking at our citizens and saying, yes, it's unfair, but we'll fix it. We'll fix it because the municipal tax and the school tax is the heaviest burden on our citizens. And it's the heaviest burden on the citizens that are A, honest, and B, not in a position to pay this extra tax. Some of the people I talk to, it's just a matter of $1,000 or $2,000. But when I go through the records and see the people whose taxes have dropped $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, the people whose properties are assessed $500,000 under what they're worth in July of 2019, it's not hard to figure out. The math is simple. The uniformity clause basically says that within in a taxing district, that the properties should be of uniform value. I have one other thing to say because I see a lot of people with their blue stripes, and I have a lot of respect for the flag. But I do want to note that Section 4 U.S. Code 8, Respect for the Flag, Section G, said the flag should never have placed upon it, nor any part of it, nor attached to any mark, insignia, letter, word, figure, design, picture, or drawing of any nature. It is a representation of the American flag, Bob.
Turn around, John.
Bob, I'm addressing the township right now. Well, yeah, I understand. But we were talking about other flags, and the other night you guys were talking about American flags. And I respect the police, I respect the firemen very much. Thank you for your time.
You're wrong.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's the end of the registered speakers. Are there any other citizens to speak on agenda items and agenda items only? There'll be opportunity later in the meeting. Just to briefly respond and.
This lady over
Oh,
here.
absolutely. Sorry, Shari.
That's all right. So, good evening. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I was looking at your agenda, and I'm Cheryl Forsty Grapp at 107 Land F Road. Sorry about that. Looking at the agenda, and I am pleased to see that you are considering a stop sign at the intersection of Bewley Road and Land F Road, which is exactly where I live. And I'm really thrilled with this because I've been talking to constituents and neighbors, and they are very worried about the children that play, because we've had an influx of lots of new kids, and they love playing in the streets. So we're really I'm thrilled that you are going to put a stop sign at that corner. So I just wanted to say thank you for keeping our kids safe while they're playing outside. So thanks.
Is there anyone else who, on an agenda item only? Just to briefly respond to the Shade Tree Commission, certainly we can talk with the Public Works and Parks to see if they can keep a list. We have been doing quite a bit of planting. I don't know where the number of trees lost. I'm not sure. Something we can look into. John, I heard you speak the other night. We certainly appreciate there are many people, myself included, whose taxes went up significantly. I don't think we have the solution. It's a county-wide reassessment. It's administered by the county.
It's administered by the county, but from the state law I read today, as a taxing authority, we're responsible for taxing our citizens, whether or not we're doing that assessment or an assessment that we come up by ourselves.
or solicit as a view?
I'd like to do some more research on that myself. I think everybody should. I mean, like I said, I came to talk last Thursday night to the school board and basically was ready to talk to you guys and didn't realize that the meeting was Monday night. I had a busy weekend. And after I did the reading today, yes, it's the county's responsibility to do the assessment. But then at that point, whether or not we accept it as a taxing authority is a legal question that wasn't answered in the pages I read.
Well, we'll look into it.
Mr. President, there is one issue. I do know that available online are all the assessments, both the old assessments and new. We may want to, it just takes a little searching at the county.
I turned them into a spreadsheet, Larry. I have them all. If people want to look at it.
It'd be great. I don't know if you if you publish them on Facebook or on your own website or something, but
I have a Google Drive.
But you can then look at your neighbors and similar houses, and it could assist you in any appeal you might want to take for the 21-22 taxes. So that information is available out there.
That's a singular thing, Larry, at that point.
Mr. President, we can't
John,
have this back and forth,
and
Mr. President.
again, I'm just, my point is just to let folks know that resource is out there. I mean, because anything that's going to be done at a macro level, obviously it's going to be done by the board, but anybody out there in the public can only do it individually. So I wanted to make sure they realize that they can have that comparison information. It is out there on the county website.
Any other commissioners have any comments?
Actually, I would like to
Can't.
each and every one of you.
No, you have an opportunity later in the meeting.
You know what? I'm entitled to say it. I'm a resident, and I'm going to say that each and every one of you should be advocating for us as residents. You have wards that you're responsible for. Way to make sure it gets done.
Next item on the agenda is proclamations. Unfortunately, a number of the Eagle Scouts could not be here, so we're not going to do those proclamations tonight. The fourth item on the agenda is presentation of the ad hoc solar project.
The PowerPoint? Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Victor Darnay from 117 Rodney Circle. I'm the chairman of the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee for Solar. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members for the great work they've been doing over the past several months. Joy Baxter, Jen Leith, Peter Puglignasi, and Noel Smith. And we're excited to come with our recommendation to the Commissioners. So first, a little background of how we got to this point. Last year, as we began talking about having solar on some of the township buildings, we looked at the Ready for 100 pledge that the township and the commissioners had approved, with the goal of having 100% clean and renewable energy by 2035, with the goal of using renewable sources such as wind, solar, and others, and then using locally produced and distributed energy. So with those goals in mind, the question was, how can the township move forward on this very important pledge? So we had the Ready for 100 commitment, and also the township wanted to be a leader on environmental sustainability and a model for other communities, as well as educating township residents on the benefits of renewable energy. What the township itself can do is only a small portion of the energy use when we take into account residential homes and businesses and schools, but by giving a good model for others to follow, the township can make a big impact. So as we looked at these three goals and which township buildings could best accomplish them, with the idea that this year we'll start on one project, see how that goes, and then next year we'll do another one, our recommendation is to start with this beautiful building here, the Township Building. So we were fortunate to get a very preliminary estimate from one of the solar companies to just give us a rough idea of the possibilities of solar for this building. One sees that the main part of the building has a lot of solar. There are a few mechanical things on the roof that have to be worked around, and then the potential for a small solar installation next to the little patio. Depending on how efficient one chooses to buy the panels, and that affects the cost, one might be able to get as high as a 175 kilowatt system, which would produce 215,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is about 40% of the electric usage of this building. With the goal of reducing the carbon footprint of the township, this amount of solar energy would save the township 160,000 pounds of carbon emissions, which is about the equivalent of 13 gas-powered vehicles driving over the course of a year. And these panels could be expected to continue working for 25 to 30 years. One of the benefits of doing it first here on the township building is the educational opportunity, that with a kiosk that would have information in real-time data on how much energy is being produced by the solar panels, everyone who comes into the township building would be able to see that data and get information and get excited about the great work the township is doing, as well as putting a system online so people could check that from home. Another piece which I haven't been up on the roof, so I don't know exactly how it would work, but from the pictures, it looks like if one's on this small patio, then one could actually be looking at the panels. The ones up on the roof are high and hard to get to, but it may be that one could have tours of local residents or school children to come and actually see some of the panels here on the township, depending on kind of the setup of that small area. So I think this building would do a great start in the educational aspects of helping township residents learn about solar and be proud of what the township is doing. One issue that we have to be thinking about on this is the roof. How well is it adapted for solar? This new building is only 5 years old. It has what's called a PVC roof, which has a 20-year warranty for materials, so it has about 15 years left. It may be that if the panels last 25 or 30 years, one has to consider replacing some of the roof, and then the panels have to be moved. That could have a bit of an expense. One option, if one wants to really be on the safe side, is maybe leave a bit of the roof free of panels so there'd be room to move the panels around if it was needed. So although we're excited to do this first step, there are other great opportunities in the township for solar that will require some more investigation. I believe the folks working on the library are already considering adding solar to their building. Then we'll be looking more at the CREC. It has another 10 years on its roof warranty, so we'd want to check and get a roofing expert to look at that and see how long they thought that roof would be able to go before needing work. And then we'd like to find out about the stadium and its roof situation, because that would be a great site for a lot of solar. Our next steps, we've already been working to develop a RFP. I'm working with a solar consultant. Once that gets done, we'd have the township look at it and hopefully approve it, and then release it to contractors to make bids. Usually, as I understand this, they would have a visit here to the site to examine the roof and make their plans for what they would propose. Once the bids come in and reviewed, some contractor would be chosen, contracts would be awarded, and hopefully by the end of the year, solar panels would be installed here on the township building. So that's our committee's report. If you have any questions, we're glad to answer them.
I do. Victor, how much savings is there in electricity with us using 40% of the electricity? What's that savings, dollars and cents?
In dollar cents, using the figure of about 6 cents a kilowatt hour, which is what we think the township roughly pays, that's about $12,000 to $13,000 a year that the township would be saving. And it's hard to predict, but one only expects the cost of electricity to go up. So that should increase in the future.
What's the cost of installation?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the cost of installation?
So it will depend on the price the different contractors come in. One rough estimate might be $2.20 a watt, and that would come to about $400,000 for the installation.
Is it going to pay back before you die?
You'll all have an opportunity to speak later.
Other questions from the commissioners? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
You turn this off.
Next on the agenda, are there any commissioner committee updates? Mr. Holmes.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I want to report on the proposed American Rescue Plan Act spending structure. Go to the next slide. In March of 2021, President Biden and the U.S. Congress approved the American Rescue Spending Act of 2021. It provided resources for fiscal recovery due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Included in the act is funding for state and local governments. Haverford Township's direct allocation was calculated by the Treasury Department at $19.8 million. It was payable in 2 installments. $9.9 million was received in May of 2021. The remaining $9.9 million is due next May, 2022. The American Rescue Plan Act specifically provides for certain permissible uses of these funds, and they are to support public health emergency brought on by COVID-19, to address the negative economic impacts brought on by COVID-19, to provide services to communities disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, provide premium pay for essential workers, address water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure needs, and to replace public sector revenue loss. Slide. Our committee, in conjunction with our township manager and our finance director, came up with a proposed first allocation of these funds, the first for public health emergency of approximately $265,000, the negative economic impacts of $3,250,000. I'm going to describe each of these in a little more detail after I go through them. Services to communities disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, providing premium pay for essential workers, addressing water, sewer, and about a third of this money is going to go to negative economic impacts, about 6% of the money to disproportionately impacted communities, about 3% of the money to premium pay for essential workers, another third to the water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure issues in the township, about 20% to public sector revenue loss, and we have set aside $250,000 for the administrative costs associated with administering some of these programs. A little more detail on each of these areas. The public health is ongoing need for PPE within the township facilities, the ongoing public outreach regarding community health and COVID-19 mitigation, and any other community health initiatives. Negative economic impacts include reemployment and upskilling scholarships to township residents currently receiving unemployment benefits as a result of the pandemic, grants to local businesses that sustained revenue losses as a result of the pandemic, matching grants to local businesses for facade improvements to make our business districts more attractive shopping destinations, and funding to continue or enhance our streetscape programs to make business districts, again, a more attractive shopping destination. The next category of services to disproportionately impacted communities, with the suggestion of about 6% of our funds. That would include women-owned and minority-owned business enterprises located within Haverford Township. Premium pay, which is financial awards to essential public works department employees who performed their duties during the stay-at-home order last year. And financial grants to the 5 volunteer fire companies restricted to compensating those members who actively served the community during the stay-at-home order. Infrastructure repairs are all the the multiple stormwater and sanitary sewer projects that we have budgeted in the next next several years are all eligible, and several large-scale projects can be addressed as well. Revenue replacement, there's a very specific formula from the Treasury Department, calculates how much of the funding we can put toward our own operations to make up for revenues we lost during COVID-19. Our official calculations of those revenue losses are approximately $3.5 million of township revenue. At this point, we're discussing earmarking only $2 million of that loss. Be aware that revenue replacement would take the place of the tax revenue that we would otherwise have to collect for purposes of our township expenses. So it will have a positive impact on all the taxpayers in Haverford Township. And then finally, the administrative portion of this is to deal with the engineering and management support for the administration of all of these programs. We ask for public comment, including any suggestions for within these spending programs, within these categories. We will make this PowerPoint available on our website and through social media. If anybody has any comments and could send them by July 30th, they can send it in the mail to our address here, or they can email our finance department at finance@haverfordtownship.org. We will summarize the comments, questions, and responses at our August 2 work session. And again, we have these 6 categories that are specified by the Act, so we would ask people to direct their comments and questions within those permissible uses. Our goal, identify a spending structure from which our programs will be designed. We have to spend this money or incur the expense by the end of 2024 and spend it by the end of 2026. So we do not have to race through this money immediately, but there's also no reason for us not to get right into it and start applying these funds. Any purchases we do under the Relief Act are subject to the same restrictions we have in Haverford Township for any of our public bidding, public awarding, advertising. We're going to go through the same process in 2022 when we have the second round of payments from the government. And it is our expectation and goal that we will monitor and reevaluate this plan, see if it's working, reallocate funds, and obviously listen to and perhaps change some of our allocations based upon the feedback we get from the public. So that is the report of the Finance Department on this program.
Any commissioners have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Next item on the agenda is the Bureau of Fire update. Commissioner Wexler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to first thank, on behalf of the Bureau of Fire, which is the composition of all 5 of our volunteer fire companies and 5 chiefs that meet every month, to thank you for observing the moment of silence at the beginning for the firefighter from Penn. Even though it was not a Haverford Township fatality, it's felt here in Haverford Township. The house that was on fire is 2 blocks outside of our township. Mutual aid is always provided by the adjacent companies. So Chief Viola's company, Brookline, and the Monarch Fire Company, Manoa Fire Company close by, we always respond to those emergencies. And we have members of our township have undergone training with individuals from Penn and that individual. So his death and sacrifice has been felt by all our volunteer firefighting companies. So thank you for observing that. And thank our volunteer firefighters for their service as well. So this month, the month of June, the Haverford Township Bureau of Fire responded to 95 incidents in the month of June 2021. The membership response total for members responding to calls was 979 members. Weekly combined training was 794 hours. 2 significant incidents occurred in the month. On June 7th, units from the Brookline, Bonaire, and Manoa responded to a second alarm house fire in Newtown Square. On June 11th, units responded to a working garage fire on St. Mary's Road. Crews had a 2-car garage with significant fire inside. No injuries to responding members were reported. And on June 21st, members from all 5 fire companies and their families attended the annual recruitment and retention family skate night at the stadium. Great time was had by all attending, and we thank the township for offering the use of the stadium as an incentive for our volunteers and a reward for the families for the time that they spend away from home in support of those. And lastly, 25 members of the Oakmont Fire Company completed their annual CPR training. Mr. President, that's the entire report.
Thank you, Commissioner Wexler. It certainly is a firefighter's death, is certainly a reminder of the valuable service and dangerous service that our volunteers give to the township.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Township Auditor update. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, it's good to see you back in person. I've reviewed the expenditures and warrants for this meeting. I found no irregularities, and all my questions have been answered to my satisfaction. In addition, can you hear me okay? Okay. In addition, I'd like to mention that, let's share that I just spent 25 days away. I spent 3 weeks in the Dominican Republic working at a kids camp, as well as a few days down in Florida. It was a great time with the kids and everything. However, it did make me appreciate how great this township is, how much nice we have it here. Made me appreciate having fresh, running water, drinking water too, drinkable water too. And lastly, after driving around the raceway that is South Florida and the tiny 2-lane highways in the Dominican Republic that are full of people, goats, livestock, dogs, chickens, and all sorts of stuff, and speed bumps, I was thinking, I'm never going to be complaining about Delaware County traffic again. But now that I'm back, I'm like, yeah, give it a week.
Thank you. Mr. Berman, Township Manager update.
Thank you. Just a few things. The road program is progressing nicely. It's not without hiccups. We're working around, we're working with, we're trying to coordinate with Aqua and Pico. There are some areas where we'll have to come back later to finish up because we couldn't get them completed because Pico and Aqua were there. But it is running much more smoothly than the program ran 2 years ago in 2019. Summer camps and the programs are all in full swing. I stopped at the Creek today just to see how things were going, and it is so nice to see all those people, all the children at the camps and at our playground programs. After the year that we've been through, it's just really nice to see everybody back out and having a good time. So thank you to Eileen Matola and Brian Barrett in our Parks and Recreation Department, and also to Kirsten Taylor and Jesse Hart for pulling all that together, and so many others who make these programs run for us. Never thought I'd be talking about a pandemic, and I never thought I'd be talking about a mysterious sickness that is killing birds. And so I do need to mention that the Pennsylvania Game Commission is investigating reports of a large number of sick or dying songbirds, and a couple things that we ought to do or not do for the time being. They're reminding us to empty our bird feeders, empty our bird baths, and to clean them out with like a 10% bleach solution. Avoid handling dead or injured birds. If you do and you have to throw them away, use gloves and put them in sealed bags if you have to do that. Keep your pets away from dead or impacted birds. It's just a standard safety precaution until we find out exactly what's happening. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Item number 9 is the approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 14th, 2021.
Second?
Seconded by Commissioner Viola.
Oliva.
I gave you a job.
You okay there?
John does everything else, so. Mr. Brown, would you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Viola. Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 10, approval of warrants.
Mr. President. Mr. President, I move we approve warrant number 7 of 2021 totaling $5,229,133.83, comprising the general and sewer fund payroll for June 10th, excuse me, for June 10th, 2021 in the amount of $671,571.27. General and Sewer Fund payroll for June 24th, 2021 in the amount of $683,151.49. General and Sewer Fund payroll for June 25th and 30th, 2021 in the amount of $22,373.40. The General and Sewer Fund payroll for July 8th of 2021 in the amount of $651,502.49. General Sewer Fund disbursement number 7 of 2021 in the amount of $2,885,338.32. Sewer Fund disbursements number 7 of 2021 in the amount of $99,653.22. Community Development Block Grant Fund disbursement number 7 of 2021 in the amount of $50,804.63. The Capital Projects Fund disbursement number 7 of 2021 in the amount of $150,268.48. Credit card statement ending June 27th, 2021 in the amount of $14,470.43.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCloskey.
Mr. President, our Township Auditor has been through these warrants. Any questions that were raised by his review were answered to his satisfaction by our Township staff, and he recommends, as do I, the approval of these warrants.
Any comments? Mr. Berman, would you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes. Item number 11 is a presentation by Jamie Schlesinger of PFM and Bill Rector of Reed Smith in regards to refunding the 2016 General Obligation Bond Series.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Schlesinger. I've served as the advisor to the township for a long time. My predecessor worked with the township for even longer than me. We've been working on refinancings, borrowings. We help finance this building. And actually, tonight, we're going to talk about a potential refinancing of the 2016 bonds, which was the second issuance that we utilized to finance this building, among other things. You may recall when you do municipal bonds, you have alternatives in the future, every 5 years, to refinance debt at your option if interest rates are lower than what they were at the time when you did the financing initially. We are near historic lows, not at all-time lows. Those occurred about a year ago. But we are at a place where right now it makes sense to consider moving forward with a potential refinancing of those 2016 bonds. The balance of that debt's about $9 million. You've been paying down principal since 2016. You'll continue to do so over the course of time. Really just like refinancing your home mortgage, we'd be exchanging higher interest rates for lower interest rates, covering the cost of issuance and saving some money. So I'll just briefly run through the analysis, what we're thinking about. This is really the first step in the process. We do 2 readings, and we have to go through the credit rating process and, of course, monitor the interest rate environment. If things go the wrong direction, we can still kind of proceed with what is called a parameters ordinance that gives us flexibility to go when the market prevails. But as of right now, things are looking good enough that we think there's enough savings to warrant moving forward to the next step. So just as I mentioned earlier, you've seen this chart before, I'm not going to bore you, but if you look at the bottom section of the chart, anytime you see, this is a history of the interest rates since 2019, you can see the 10-year rate back in January was about 2.2%. The all-time high actually happened right when we all went home for quarantine. Things started dipping down as the economy was getting adjusted to the world we were living in. Things bounced up a little bit over the last few months, but it kind of maintained a relatively balanced interest rate where we've been able to kind of get municipal bonds completed. Lots of investors have been interested in this type of credit. The township is rated AAA, the best you can be, so we believe when we go to market, it'll be at a good position. This is a summary of what your total debt looks like. Again, you have 3 bond issues outstanding. We're looking at this column 2, which is the 2016 issue. The balance is just under $9 million of total principal outstanding. The call provision, that's the option that the township has, occurs on December 1st. We can settle as early as 90 days before the call date. So we can settle as early as September 1st. Based on the process and going through the multiple readings and the credit rating process, if all goes well, we would probably lock in interest rates in early August, which will allow us to settle sometime in early to mid-September, just as early as we can lock in rates and settle on this transaction. It's reasonably simple when you look at your payment schedule. This is pretty standard. The overall payments are about $485,000 currently. The average rate's about 2.7%, give or take, and about, again, $490-ish thousand per year. Based on what we believe current interest rates are, and I will point out it's been a little volatile the last few weeks or so, but I think give or take right now, you'll probably save on average between $20,000 and $30,000 per year throughout the life of the issuance. So I think conservatively we're looking at about $600,000. I think we could be somewhere in the $600,000 to $800,000 range once it's all said and done. All these savings, like you've seen from that I've done in the past, these are all net of all cost of issuance. So this would be in the pocket of the township and the taxpayers. Generally speaking, based on a $600,000 savings, given the amount which you're refinancing, that represents 6.7% savings. You have a debt management policy that was created a few years ago. As long as you get at least 2% savings, that is the kind of the warrant that we have under our policy. So clearly we're above that, and that is reasonable for this type of transaction. This is an estimate of the cost of issuance, much like your settlement sheet you see with your refinancing a mortgage. We've made some estimates of what the cost will be. When you put all that together, you'll have a new issuance of just over $9 million once it's all said and done. Again, we're reducing interest rate from about 2.7 down to about 2%. Maybe we'll do a little better. Hopefully we will. And if that happens, we'll save a couple extra dollars. Outside of that, this is just a timeline. As I mentioned earlier, what really drives this is this first reading of the ordinance, any comments you may have. If you would like to proceed and we'll move forward, we'll come back at your next meeting with the formal ordinance. Once that's approved, we've been able to take the next step and lock in the interest rates a few days after that approval occurs.
Mr. Schlesinger, could you confirm, unlike refinancing a home where after paying for 5 years, you might refinance for 30 years and add 5 more years to your principal, in this circumstance, we are still limited to the original length of our borrowing because it's associated with the asset life of what was financed. So if you can just confirm that while we are saving $600,000 and reducing the interest rate, we are not reducing the rate at which we are paying back the principal.
That's correct.
And so not extending debt out or kicking it to the future.
That is correct, yeah. 90% of the time, that's how we traditionally do transactions, where we match the maturity with what we currently have. Depending on the issuers that we're working with, they're having some cash flow needs, we may stretch things out if we need to. This is not the case here. We're amortizing the debt.
Nor with the last refinancing.
Nor the last year.
where
You've
we
never extended your debt.
Saved like $1.5 million on
That's
that
correct.
as well. Thanks.
Yeah, this will be exactly as how we planned going forward. The balance really is, just not to scare you, you've seen this in the past. Again, we believe the borrowing, once it's all said and done, will be about $9 million. What you'll eventually see is that parameters ordinance that establishes a maximum principal amount, which will be a higher amount that we expect, a little over $10.56 million, and we're assuming a max coupon rate of 5%. Neither one of those things are possible in this environment to not get those savings that we're talking about. We have to do this for flexibility when we price the bonds. So we've never come back borrowing more than you need, but this is the way we do it when we do it in advance of a borrowing. So, any questions?
Also, there is within pricing of these bonds, you may have a face amount of a bond, but get less, and then you make up for that with a difference between the actual interest rate and the coupon rate on the bond. So it may not, it has the same net effect of what we're writing here, but it just may maybe $10 million where we're only issued 9.5.
Yes.
But we pay less interest because it's based upon getting less.
Exactly right. We're planning for the potential of getting a premium bond. That's what the 5% coupons look like. But if we get a discount bond, it kind of works the other way. So this kind of meets both purposes in this parameters.
Right.
In this market right now, over the last few weeks, we have found that there's been 3% coupons have been the more norm for a bank qualified issue, which is what this looks like. Over the last couple of days, because treasury rates have come down, we've seen more discount bonds, which I think is a good thing for the township. Again, until we go to market, we'll figure that out, but that's why we're planning for this in this fashion.
And the fact that we're both staying within the blank qualified numbers and that we anticipate maintaining our AAA bond rating, we expect to get the best possible rate.
That's correct. Yeah, this is, it's not the all-time lows, but you have everything behind you. You have a strong name, you've always done very well in the bond market, you've got the AAA, and in this environment, I suspect the investors will gobble up these bonds. And we would utilize a competitive process like we've done in the past for this particular transaction, where we'd have underwriters throughout the country bid on in an auction, and whoever is the lowest overall interest rate is the winner. So I don't know who it is just yet, but we'll know that, in about a month. I think I hit all the high notes. I know if you want to discuss the ordinance or just wait.
I drafted the ordinance, if anyone has a question about it.
I think by now you're getting this right, Bill?
Yeah, I'll just keep my mouth shut.
Any other questions? Nothing more, just a kind of nod to continue moving forward, and eventually we'll be back to you with the parameters ordinance and hopefully the AAA rating again.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Holmes, do you want to do the motion here?
I will. I move we authorize the incurring of non-electoral debt by the Township of Haverford to fund the Township's general obligation bonds series of 2016, providing for the issuance of series of general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10,650,000, appointing a paying agent and sinking fund depository, and authorizing a paying agency agreement, setting forth provisions regarding the denominations, maturities, rates of interest, and terms of redemption for the bonds, and authorizing a book entry-only system therefore, providing for the registration, transfer, and exchange of the bonds, authorizing the sale of the bonds at private sale by negotiation or by private sale upon invitation, and authorizing the acceptance of a bond purchase proposal, authorizing the execution and delivery of the bonds, covenanting to budget and pay debt service on the bonds, and pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the township for the payment thereof, establishing a sinking fund for the bonds, establishing a rebate fund, authorizing the redemption of the refunded bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of an escrow deposit agreement for the refunded bonds, provided for certain covenants and designations regarding federal income tax matters, authorizing the preparation and filing of a debt statement, borrowing-based certificate, debt exclusion proceedings, and a transcript of the proceedings for the issuance of the bonds, providing for the disposition of the proceeds of the bonds, covenanting to pledge sufficient funds to refund the refunded bonds, providing for the form of the bonds, authorizing a preliminary and final official statement for the bonds, authorizing a municipal bond insurance policy and making certain agreements with the issuer of such a policy, providing that the local government unit debt act shall apply to the bonds, providing that this ordinance shall be a contract with the holders of the bonds, authorizing certain additional actions, including the execution of a tax compliance agreement and a continuing disclosure agreement of the township, delegating approval powers to certain officers, repealing inconsistent ordinances, and setting forth the effective date hereof.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wexler.
I'm just thrilled that I didn't have to read that because they'll be reading it. And
Brevity was not one of the things with this ordinance. Any comments? Mr. Berman, can you please call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Next item is local service tax regulations.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
President, I move we approve updating Haverford Township's local service tax regulations.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Quinn. Any comments?
I would ask our Township Finance Director to just give a quick explanation of this.
Sure. The township publishes the local service tax regulations as a helpful aid or assistance to employers within the township. This tax is paid by everybody who works in Haverford Township. It doesn't not have anything to do with residency. But these regulations are out there, rules, procedures, whatnot, to help employers comply and report the tax and withhold it correctly from their employees. We last issued it about 8 years ago, so this is just a cleanup and update for any new law changes. And this is available on our website to any employer or anybody who's interested.
And as I understand, this is a $52 a year tax. That rate is not changing. That rate has not changed in some time.
No, nothing with the rate, the collection methods, nothing of that nature is changing. There really wasn't even any law changes. It really was more cleanup and updating just to make sure we captured any law changes.
Right, and no changes to the minimum income limit below which you are exempt from this, and no changes to the credit you get for paying a different town.
Correct. Anybody who makes over $12,000 is subject to this, so anybody under $12,000 does not pay this. And $52 was mentioned, and that's the maximum. That's the maximum that can be taken out for the year.
Thank you.
All I have.
Mr. Berman, could you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Next item is settlement and stipulation. Counsel? Mr. Holmes?
Mr. President, I move we approve the settlement and stipulation of counsel in the following owner-initiated property assessment appeal matters and authorize counsel and proper officers to execute the necessary documents in the following litigations. 1, property located at 1010 Westchester Pike, Unit 101, DC Folio number 22-09-02716-01, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number CV-2020-008695. Property located at 1010 Westchester Pike, Unit 201, DC Folio number 22-09-02716-02, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case CV number 2020-008694. Property located at 1010 Westchester Pike, Unit 202, DC Folio 22-09-02716-03, pending the Court of Common Pleas case number CV-2020-008693. Property located at 1010 Westchester Pike, Unit 301, DC Folio number 22-09-02716-04, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number CV-2020-008692. Property located at 101 Westchester Pike, Unit 302, DC Folio number 22-09-02716-05, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number 2020-008691. Property located at 1010 Westchester Pike, Unit 303, DC Folio 22-09-02716-06, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number 2020-008690. Property located at 629 Eagle Road, DC Folio number 22-01-00366-00, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number 2020-009729. And property located at 2000 Old Westchester Pike, DC Folio 22-09-02757-00, pending in the Court of Common Pleas, case number 2020-009807.
Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wexler.
Mr. President, we've discussed in the past, these are cases that have been brought with regard to property assessment appeals. The township and the school district and the county are all parties to these, and our township solicitor has recommended we approve these.
Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 12, ordinance number P10, 2021, zoning map change for 833 Buck Lane. This is the second reading.
Mr. President,
Yes. Mr.
motion
McCabe.
motion to adopt second reading of ordinance number P10-2021, revising its zoning map by reclassifying the zoning of the property located at 833 Buck Lane Haverford, PA, known as Delaware County Folio Number 22-05-00138-00, and Delaware County Tax Map Number 22-03-297000 from INS Institutional District to R1A Low Density Residential.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel. I think we've had discussions in the past. Anybody have any comments? Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 13, ordinance number P11, 2021, traffic, first reading.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P11, 2021, authorizing the following traffic restrictions on the following highways. Special purpose parking in front of 2308 Bridmore Avenue, Ardmore, PA, and a stop intersection on Bewley Road, south at intersection of Landaff Road.
Second. Seconded by Commissioner Quinn. Comments? Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 14, ordinance number P13, 2021. It's also a
President.
traffic, first reading.
Mr. President, motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P13, 2021, amending Chapter 175, 175-67, towing, hooking fees, and storage charges.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Oliva. Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 15, resolution number 2226, 2021, announcement of a public hearing, historic home survey, additional properties.
President, make a motion to adopt resolution number 2226, 2021, announcing a public hearing to be held on Monday, August 2nd, 2021, at 6 p.m. in the Commissioners' Meeting Room, 1014 Darby Road, Havertown, PA.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Oliva. Any comments? Mr. Berman, could you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 16, contract award, Lanark Park.
Want me to read?
Yeah.
All right, upon the recommendation of the township engineer, reject all bids for ADA pedestrian access at Lanark Park and rebid the project at a later time when additional funding can be identified.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wexler. Any comments?
Yeah, I want an explanation. I'd like an explanation.
So we advertised for the ADA ramp at Lanark. There were, it's in the packet, there were 5 bids received. The spread of the bids was $27,000 to $203,000. The gap between the first 2 bidders was 23 to 71. The next bidder was 71 to 128. Commissioner Oliva, we haven't seen those kind of spreads ever. Supply chain, contractors saying they're in trouble getting materials, trouble getting equipment. The low bidder actually withdrew his bid. So all those considered, the second, third, and fourth bidder have done a lot of work in the township. We've had good experience with them. Our suggestion, our recommendation, that we draw the bids, we see what the end of summer, fall brings. The couple of second bidder said that he thought the fall would bring a more moderate bidding atmosphere where supply chain issues are getting addressed a little bit better. And you're not fighting the school district work because the school district like to bid their work and get it done this time here. So with all those things taken into consideration, we would suggest that we reject all the bids and rebid it in a month or so.
Right, you realize that's the only access to that park. Once that apartment building is open, the access is those those steps in the back, and somebody with a carriage, can't get into that park.
And we could award it to the second bidder and forfeit, and the first bidder forfeits his bid bond.
So you can't get through that park through the lot now, the front?
They're going to lock those gates once the apartment building is open. There'll be no access from the one side. The only access will be through mowing.
Is there a way that we could keep it open until this is done?
We could talk to the owner of the building and see if he would do that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get ADA access to that park.
And I don't want to speak for Dave, but I mean, his recommendation isn't that we're bypassing any of this. It's just to wait a couple months to rebid it.
I understand.
I'm sure everybody would be in full support of it in 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't
I
think
couldn't
that
quite
we're
get
not gonna
it
do
said,
it.
but yeah, we're not recommending that we don't rebid it. We're recommending we go out.
Right.
I understand your concern is the timing.
Right, but for 2 months, for the next 2 months, nobody can access, or people with carriages can't access that park. People in
The ADA,
wheelchairs
right.
cannot access that park. So we need to be aware of that. We're in violation of ADA compliance for the next 2 months unless we can get the owner of the apartment building to allow us access or leave those gates open for the next 2 months. That's all I'm saying. So we need to remedy the situation.
We could
one way or
talk with the
another.
property owner. I don't know the status of their CVOs on getting into the apartments. But we could talk to the property owner.
Yeah.
And see if he can make some temporary accommodations for ADA accessibility.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Berman, would you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Next item is for Niner Hall.
Mr. President,
Yes.
motion to award the contract for the Niter Hall staircase renovation to Jeffrey H. Wolf, Haverford Town, PA, in the amount of $12,400, submitting the lowest responsible quote.
Second?
Seconded by Commissioner Oliva. Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Next item is for the stadium.
President?
Mr. Holmes.
President, I move we award a contract for the replacement and installation of the desiccant wheel component within the stadium's dehumidifier to Elliott Lewis, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $31,800.
Second.
Any comment? Mr. Berman, could you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 17, appointment to the Shade Tree Commission.
Mr. President,
Mr. Siegel.
motion to appoint Pano Kalageropoulos to fill an unexpired 3-year term to expire on December 31, 2023.
Second?
Seconded by Commissioner Oliva. Mr. Berman, could you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Item number 18 is the continuation of the citizen forum for non-agenda items.
First of all, Chief.
Sure, no problem.
Sir, appreciate it. My name is Bob Dell. I live at 5057 Brittany Lane. And a couple of years ago, this is going to be a recurring theme. We arbitrarily took a member of the fire service. We used our police to do an investigation of a man not suspected of a crime or even thought about doing something illegal. You sent him out of the fire service, you held the fire department hostage, and you still refused to set the parameters of what organizations people know they can associate with or not. How long is it going to take? You sat there, you're a fire guy, and you guys all did this. You sent the chief to inspect this guy. When will we know? So the residents, the township employees, and the volunteers of our township know who they may associate with or not. Do we have an answer on that? Nobody, right? You're all sitting up there going, I don't know. I don't know. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. You took that man away and played political games with it, and you still will not answer what groups is somebody allowed to associate with or not. Is that in the code of conduct? Is it annotated anywhere? Where do we come to that? Because you guys did wrong. What I really want to do tonight is what I passed out here, and these people can see on the back of my shirt, is the almost 400 officers of the law who gave their life in the line of duty last year. We have a man on the board here who's made a mission to remove the fraternal police flag from our police station, a flag that's been around far longer than people realize and has zero ties to racism or injustice. It's supportive of who it represents, the men and women, past, present, and future, who risk their lives for us to have the gift of liberty through one of our essential basic rights of free speech. It represents those that have given their lives for that. But because radical people arbitrarily declared it racist, you, Mr. Holmes, have declared war against our department flying the fraternal flag at our police station. Gentlemen, where have we gone as a township? When the big issues are having a euphemistic public lynching of a public service servant based on who he briefly associated with a year prior, and demanding our police station take down the fraternal flag, I suggest you reconsider, apologize, and own it. This has people trespassing on residents' properties to leave letters complaining about the flag that supports our police. Here it is. This went to Lolly Spade. They trespassed on her property. This flag should never have been placed upon it, nor on any part of it, nor attached to any mark, insignia, letter, and figure, blah, blah, blah. We know this. Your thin blue line flag is in violation. Respect the flag. Can't think of anything less patriotic than this offensive display of racism. Have a great day. This is what you're perpetrating. This is what you're propagating. These men and women have a flag. It's not the American flag. It's not an adulterated flag. I served my country. Kudos to your son, because I know he's going to too. So congratulations for him. This is something wrong. You need to address this, and it needs to happen soon. The complete and utter nonsense is further proving your eyes are elsewhere and not on our township. And since you enjoy letters demanding resignations, like the one that you sent to the President of the United States, if you fail to acknowledge the harm and ill will you are fostering toward our police, then we demand you resign. It carries the same weight as your pompous letter to the POTUS did. We love the people of this township. We love all the people of this township. It's time you did too, not just to those that subscribe to your philosophy. Please stop imprinting others' issues on our town. You're creating problems that are negligible to non-existent in our town, so you can appear to have a solution to the problem, usually involving some more government power grab to solidify your perceived fiefdom. Take care of Havertown, not your national agenda, which isn't applicable here in any way. Please get your stuff together. I love this town. We all do. Let's stop dividing it, demeaning it, and attacking our public servants.
Anyone else care to speak?
Yes, I am Major H. Ross Peterson, United States Army retired. And I sat through a presentation.
Could you give us your address?
Oh, yes, 29 Derwin Drive.
Thank you.
And I sat through an address through the Environmental Advisory Committee. And beautiful building we have here. It's 5 years old. And for whatever reason, the architect who designed this building did not include a solar system on its roof. I'm not exactly sure why or why not. But let me tell you how things work in the real world. You're going to build a township building. Would you like air conditioning? Okay, yeah, we'd like air conditioning. Well, there's going to be a cost to the air conditioning. So what is that cost? Okay, wow. We are going to bear that cost and include air conditioning in the building. Well, what is the cost for solar panels on the roof? I have no idea, but maybe as commissioners, that was some sort of decision that you folks made 5 years ago. Maybe not. But what is the cost? Is it willing to be borne by the township residents in their tax dollars? And that's the decision that you have to make. Now, with respect to the architect who designed this building, apparently there was no solar system designed for this building. Maybe there was a very good reason for that, because it kept the cost of the building down. Now, we saw a proposal tonight and some information on what the cost savings might be. We have no idea what the cost of the solar system will be. So we're left to figure out, what is that return on investment going to be? How many years is that going to pay off? Is that the best way for our township's money to be spent if it's a 40-year payback for a solar system on a roof? Well, it is a very good investment if the next investment that the township wants to fund has a 45-year payback. But it's not a very good investment if our tax dollars can be spent on projects that may have a 10-year payback, all right? So I'd like the commissioners to take that into consideration. You have a fiduciary responsibility to control our tax dollars, and you are supposed to spend our tax dollars wisely. And whatever project, the solar panel project or any other project, the decision to make, to either approve or reject that should be based on the financial information, the payback. So I'd like to remind all of the commissioners that on behalf of the citizens, that's what your duty is. Now, I've also heard something about the ADA, and I'm very sympathetic to the ADA. But for about 2 or 3 months a year in this township, we seem to have winter. And when we have winter, we also have snow. And I always have a little chuckle under my breath where I see the snow being plowed. It's always plowed at the ADA access ramps in our neighborhood. So I conclude that maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year, we don't have any disabled people who need those ADA access ramps, because they certainly aren't able to use them when the snow gets plowed there. So I'd like you to take that into consideration as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I just have one question. And can I have a question about the agenda? I just wanted to know, for what did we settle 629 Eagle Road and 2000 Old Westchester Pike for?
I do not have them with me. I have them in my office. I can brief the board on that after the meeting.
Okay. I'm just curious because, quite honestly, the assessments look pretty good. And if we went lower than that, I don't see any reason that we should have. I mean, there was already a $2.2 million for 629 Eagle, which sold for $2.4 million in 2018. And 2000 Old Westchester Pike was at $13 million, and they have like a $600 million blanket mortgage on it. So a bank thinks it's worth a lot more than the assessment.
Your contact information.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
Ross Anderson, 220 Haverford Road. I want to say, I think our police here are amazing. I think they do an awesome job supporting the community. I also think they've been very proactive in addressing race and issues. I think it's admirable that, they brought in Dr. Whitehead to speak to him. Dr. Whitehead, my son goes to Chatham, so I know him. He's an awesome guy and the perfect person to speak about race. I also do know, too, that they have a tough and stressful job. Like, they have 22,000 people documented have died. And also, too, like, the average retirement for a police officer before they pass away is 10 years because of all the stress that they've gone through, the health issues they've had in their life. But that being said, that flag that stands out front of the building, that flag, the Blue Lines flag, only came out in 2014, and yes, it did. It only came about in 2014 after the Black Lives Matter. After Black Lives Matter, and many view it as a counter, response to Black Lives Matter and all the police violence. I do know too that a lot of these groups are led by the same people that would say things like George Floyd was killed by fentanyl. And we know that's not true. He was killed by having a neck on his knee. That being said, I think it's better to do other things to support the police officers than fly a controversial flag. I think things like giving raises, giving more training, improving the pensions, better benefits, better health care. But to fly the flag, I think it's just inviting more controversy. And I do know there are other police officers out there and captains that have banned the flags themselves. Thank you.
Chief, do you want to have any comment at this point?
The reference to the flag itself, how long it's been here?
Yeah.
It was flying in the old building. Joe's looking it up. It's at least 20 years or more, at least.
So we just had a public official lie.
And there's different flags, right? There's different flags. The one that flies out there is not the same as other flags that I think some have referred to.
Ours is the thin blue line flag. It has no representation with the American flag. It represents one thing, and that's to the lives lost of police officers nationwide.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Just in regards to the solar, it was a presentation tonight that if we decide to go forward, it would be bid. And then based on those bids, we would be voting on that. So, at this point, I think we don't have the numbers. And you're right, we do need to take a responsibility, but it's just another step going forward.
Mr. President?
If there's one more citizen.
Well, with regard to solar, this has been the subject of our public meetings for over a year. We have estimates of each project being approximately $500,000. We had the presentation tonight about what the anticipated savings could be with regard to generating solar on top of this building. That included an area of the roof that would not be covered by the solar. I'm not sure that's ultimately going to be the design. I think we should maximize all the assets we have in the township for purposes of generating solar power. But the evaluation can't simply be whether or not we return our money the first time we do this. Part of what we're doing here is trying to set a proper example of getting away from fossil fuels and reducing our carbon footprint. And for the same reason that each year we don't decide whether or not we're going to stop recycling because recycling is getting more expensive for us. It's simply the right thing for us to do. And we as a board unanimously have agreed to put in our budget for this year and for next year solar projects so that we can examine them, we can employ the assistance of experts on the issue, and ultimately install the projects. And if these projects first done are lost leaders, there's certainly every expectation that that technology will advance and that energy generated by fossil fuels will just continue to get more expensive. So an analysis in 2021 of how quickly we'll get our money back may not be an appropriate analysis 5 years from now if energy costs have doubled or tripled that are done in the traditional ways. So it's the right thing to do, and the analysis should not be confined to how quickly we can get our money back, but instead should be done by the greater good of what comes from us pursuing alternative means of generating power and setting an example for other townships and for our private businesses as well.
Well, we'll have much more opportunity to discuss it in future meetings.
That's why you have a payback.
We will have opportunities to discuss it at further meetings in the future.
Mr. Holmes really thinks it's a great project. Let him buck
Okay,
up his own money.
we can't have back and forth. Can't have back and forth. Are there anyone else?
Tough night, aren't I, Chief?
One last speaker. Please, we cannot, no. One speaker at a time.
Nick Finelli, 811 Nailers Run Road. In regards to the solar, two things I haven't heard mentioned by anybody up here or the gentleman is maintenance and insurance. In my previous life, I was in the business world, and we looked into it. And when those two figures popped in our faces, we pulled away. So you better get figures on that and encompassing the whole ball of wax there. That's my only point.
Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Bill Ruane from 1250 Steel Road. Mr. Ryan, is it? Yeah, I'm Bill Ruane. Nice to meet you. My grandfather taught me never talk about maintenance. So I'd like to bring something up. You started to mention
Please
towards-
speak
you
into
started
the-
to mention tonight towards the end about flag code.
Yep.
Could you repeat that because you were interrupted by Mr. Dell?
I can't, we can't do this. No.
You can't do that? Okay,
Can't
but
do
you were
that.
referencing flag code and referencing the police department, I assume, as the same. So,
Police department, just the US.
Please.
so what I would like to get
Speaker
into
at
is
a
something
time.
that happened in my ward, okay? And it's regards to a flag. It's in Mr. Wexler's ward. And so I wrote it down so I stick to the point. It was about a month ago on Steel Road. A young family, my neighbors, they were targeted by some boys, some men in a Jeep. This family has 2 young kids. I'm going off topic, but they have 2 young kids. And it was a Saturday morning, I believe, or Friday morning, and they were walking their kids out to their Jeep. They have a Jeep as well. And as they were walking out, these 2 men in a Jeep drove by their house and yelled all sorts of gay explicitives at them, at the family, because they had just raised a pride flag, okay? So it was hanging, they had just put it up, their kids were exposed to this, okay? The father was outraged. There was nothing he could do about it, okay? Because he had his kids in his arm, and these kids just decided to drive by and yell these explicitives, okay? So, with that being said, later that night, those kids came back to the township, and they egged their house, okay? Now, there was no public mention of this. I know the police department knows about it, okay, and they're looking into it, okay? But these people questioned why they moved to Havertown, okay? They moved to Havertown because of the diversity here, because of the acceptance. And obviously, that was a poor example of that. Me as a Republican, okay, I look across political parties. I was outraged when that happened. And they were frankly surprised, as somebody who, had some particular lawn signs on his property during the election, that I actually took interest in it, okay? So what I want to say is that you want to stand here, with all due respect, and quote U.S. flag code. You as well, I know the topic was driven by you, respectively, okay? But what I'd like to show you is what that flag looked like. It's an American flag with the LGBTQ colors.
And I don't believe in that either.
Do you have a problem?
I grew up on a naval base when I was a young man.
You have a problem with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we can't have back, okay, just, no.
So you would tell that
Please.
family that they were wrong for raising that flag. A family that was targeted.
Okay, we can,
So that's my point.
okay,
That's
thank
my
you
point
very
I'm
much.
making.
Okay.
What you need to think twice about when you start.
Okay, John, please.
So I just wanted to bring that topic up. It's an American flag altered with the LGBTQ.
I don't believe in any of that.
So I would like to see you knock on their door and tell them you shouldn't have been raising that flag.
Give them
That's
another
why you were
flag.
targeted.
Fine.
Stick to the
Okay,
assessments,
please,
'cause you sounded
please.
a lot
This
smarter.
has got to stop.
Thank you. Okay, item number 19, new business.
President,
Mr. Siegel.
I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda authorizing the solicitor to appear at the zoning hearing board relating to the library.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Holmes.
It's added to the agenda.
Proclamation.
Yes.
By acclamation.
Just going to do that by
In favor of having it.
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Mr. President, I make a motion to authorize the township solicitor to appear at the zoning hearing board relating to the application of the library for a variance to represent the township as the owner of the property.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Quinn. Any discussion? Mr. Berman, can you call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio.
No.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes. Is there any other new business? Item number 20, other business. Commissioner D'Amelio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to publicly state, and I said this in the past, what the thin blue line flag represents. It represents every dead police officer, no matter what color, no matter what ethnic background. That's who it represents. And as long as I'm on this board, I will fight to keep that flag up.
That's it?
Commissioner Oliva.
Well, it's very well said, Steve. I agree. I think that the flag represents the police officers who've passed, and it to me is not it's not racism. It is something something that we need to do, something that that I agree with. So there you go.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCoskey.
So also, last month, HPD suffered a loss for themselves and for the community. Marisa Hinchy, who was one of the employees of HPD and a volunteer in the township, passed away tragically at a very young age. She left behind two little girls, ages 5 and 3. HPD ran a donation over the weekend. They collected at House Cup Coffee on Darby Road, and also in their HPD offices along Darby Road. It ended Saturday, but I'm sure they would still be willing to accept donations if people were interested. There's information on their Facebook page and the website. And obviously, I think everybody in the township would also express sincere condolences to her family, and hope for the best in tragic circumstances. So, nothing was on the agenda tonight about this, but I guess it's the topic du jour. And I think there's a nuanced conversation to be had on it. And I don't know if screaming about it or putting our chief on the spot tonight is really the most productive way to have that conversation. I also think we seem to be, in the part of the discussion, there seemed to be discussion of 4 different flags, as if they were not different and need separate discussions, and I think that's part of the conversation to be had. I think we've had those conversations at various times over the last 3 or 4 years, and I think we're going to continue to have those discussions as we, as a township, try to both be open and diverse and supportive of township officials and police in town, and maintain the type of township that we all want to be. I don't know if coming off the cuff of a meeting like this and giving some talking point really would be appropriate tonight, other than to say I think it's a nuanced conversation that we in a township need to continue to have in a respectful and productive way amongst all of our citizens. As far as solar, we're going to talk about solar a lot more in the months ahead. We're going to consider finances. We're going to consider the environmental impact. And I think this board has shown over the last at least 5 years, 6 years that I've been a part of it, that we're committed to being an environmentally sound partner and doing our part, both as a municipality, but also as a leader of all the residents in town, to set a good example as to what is environmentally sound decisions. And we do that through our hiring, we do that through our purchase of vehicles, we do that through our use of energy. And if we can use cleaner, more renewable energy on our buildings, that's something we should consider every single time, and we should do it in the most responsible financial way, but we need to do it. And I think that is something that needs to be taken into account. It's not that we go spend whatever we want to spend, but these are steps that we have to take. Climate change is real, it's happening. Every time you turn on the news, there's another storm, there's another fire, there's another incident that is happening. There's a building that just collapsed in Florida. There are fires all over the West Coast. There was a 120-degree temperature in Portland, Oregon. It's not a question of if it's going to happen, it is happening now, and we need to do it everything we can to be a responsible citizen in that regard as this municipality. And I will vote every time to do that. Thanks.
Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you. Let me just address the buildings first. This board has been committed to responsible environmental policies since I've been on the board. When we built the Community Recreation Center at the Reserve, we included geothermal energy. We actually added to the budget of the building at the time. I believe it was Commissioner D'Amelio who made that motion, and we committed to it. When we built this building, and I, as chair of the property committee, was at one of the meetings we had, we addressed various options. We also addressed various budgets because of the issues that were going on, the borrowing, and at that time, we made the determination as to how this building would be heated, air conditioned, et cetera, with the understanding that we would continue to move forward to look for environmentally responsible ways to do that. And exploring solar is one of those ways. I had not planned to sort of ever address directly the issue that I will call messaging. When we talk about the police flag, we're talking about a message. When we talk about what happened at the fire company, we talk about a message. And everyone wants to shadow that message in their own terms. And I have purposely not spoken about that incident because it is my view, and it remains my view, that the township manager speaks for the board on issues of that. However, let's talk about messages regarding the Bonaire Fire Company incident. There were issues there not only with the firefighter, but with the leadership of that fire company. I have never made a public statement about that. Yet I, as the only Jewish member of this board, have been the subject of vile, racist attacks that were unrelenting. I had my Facebook page trolled. I was called an effing K in multiple emails. My email became so difficult I had to stop it. That came from both within the township, including some that was fomented by at least some, including some I believe are in the room, and others. So,
Please.
I haven't accused, I have not, I am not about to name names, and I did not. But for 8 months, my Facebook account was inaccessible because of trolling and other hacking, cloning, etc. I have continued to be the subject of attacks that I have kept quiet. So for those who believe that the message is always positive or that there is unity, we have a lot of places to go. And that's where this township needs to move. And that's where we are trying to, working with consultants to help address the issues within the township, not only within the fire company in particular, but to make sure that we are actually an inclusive community. We're not there yet. We are a good community. I love living in this township. I don't love the fact that I had to put in enhanced security over the years at my office and at my home because of fears for my and my family's safety. And it increased following those incidents. And it is tragic that it did. I have lived in this community now for 37 years or 36 years, and it is a wonderful place. I've raised a family. But for those who believe that the message of unity is here, we have places to go. And that has been something that I have committed myself to. I am now on the board of the Anti-Defamation League. We need to address these issues. They go well beyond this township. But for those who believe that we have a unified community, we have places to go. We need discussions. One of the things that I have relished in 13 years on this board is the fact that I have always been able to have dialogues with Chief Viola, with Chief Pettin, with Deputy Chief Hagan, and everyone else in this township in civil ways. And I have seen how police departments can operate in a way that is respectful for the community and for themselves. I've seen how this township does it. But does that mean we're fine? No. And for those who take personal offense, I will leave it at that. I'm not about to get into who did what. We know some of the people. The issue, though, isn't about them or me. It is about this global community here and broader. And until we acknowledge that we all have our biases and that we need to move forward, we're not going to move forward. Thank you.
Mr. McCabe.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Siegel for that. I appreciate his honesty and opening up, and that's very powerful. I'd also like to thank the Haverford Township Police Department. As a son of a cop and brother of a cop, I know the good work that they do day in and day out. Specifically in my area right now in the 5th, it seems like every other street is closed or under construction. So the Public Works and Haverford Township have done a very nice job helping us along the way. I've been a proud member of the Civil Service Commission for over 12 years, and you fully have my support. Thank you.
Commissioner Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the, with us coming back to our public meetings, one of the things I would like us to do from 2020 as well as from this year in 2021 is I would like to try to gather some intel on some of our high school and college graduates, our regional ones who, who did something special and may warrant a proclamation from us. I know of a couple constituents and friends, Fulbright scholars, several people who graduated from some of our service academies in 20 and 21, and I know in the past we have made a point of doing proclamations for those students and oftentimes for their parents. And with the pandemic now easing the restrictions, I do two things. I pledge that I'm going to find out whatever information I can from our school districts and from our neighbors about about students and young people in our town who we think merit our recognition for something they accomplished. And I also invite anybody watching the meeting to make me or make us aware of any college graduate or high school graduate who in 20 or 21 didn't get the kind of public recognition that they have, that their contemporaries have received in previous years from this board, and we just couldn't do it because of what the pandemic required us to do. So I invite anybody to alert me or alert any of my colleagues of any graduates of note in their families or in their neighborhoods or in their, or just that they're aware of, that whose accomplishments they'd like to bring to our attention so we could consider heralding them and also recognizing their parents for the job that they did. I'm not an unbiased participant in this. This morning, my son left for his first 2-year assignment with the Coast Guard. He was commissioned as an officer just several weeks ago after graduating from the Merchant Marine Academy. I was not fully prepared psychologically to take the beating I took tonight, considering the emotional beating my wife and I took this morning as my son climbed in his car and drove off to Seattle, perhaps for the next 2 years. So I'll save for another meeting my passionate efforts to discuss the thin blue line flag. As far as our two neighbors who left, I would have thanked Mr. Dell for noting my son's service, and I would have asked the other gentleman whose name I did not get, I would have asked him more information about that terrible incident with his neighbors and reminded him that we have a Human Relations Commission in this town that, investigates and cares about and tries to react to any kind of situations where people feel attacked for who they are or their status or some other, whether it's their orientation or their gender or their race or their religion. And I was quite moved by his story and by his support for the neighbors. And I remind everybody that this is a wonderful town. We were ahead of the rest of people in Pennsylvania when we passed that Human Relations Act. And I'd like to think we are going to be ahead of the people in Pennsylvania when we take on solar energy and some other things. And I think in a lot of circumstances, this entire board has done things to try to think for the future and not just react to what's in front of us. So that is all I have to say. And I will, that's all I have, Mr. President.
I'm going to start off on something positive in my neighborhood since the Ninth Ward was. I'd like to thank all the volunteers that made the July 4th parade happen. It sounds like it's a trivial thing, that kids that decorate their bicycles, but after this last year, it becomes a big thing. It's a thing that the kids remember. It's a thing that made the parents feel good. It's made our elderly citizens feel good. We honor the veterans that live in our ward to come there. It's not the place where we accept racial hatred. We accept everybody at that event. In fact, we don't even know. I'm probably the only one that's ever asked me. Somebody said, an elderly woman said, she told me her party affiliation. I said, I've never asked anybody in the Ninth Ward what their party was, ever, and I don't care. But so there are good things that happen there. There's a good neighborhood thing that teaches our children about independence. I kind of echo with there. I grew up, I was in the military, graduated from the military academy. What most people don't know is wearing a shirt with the flag on it is not legal. There is a code. The American bikinis, the shirts, the pants, the swimsuits, they all violate that code of the American flag. So I hold that near and dear to my heart. As our military retiree said tonight, it's something it's an honor to have served, just like it's an honor for our EMS chief to serve our township, our police officers to serve, and our firemen to serve. It's an honor to do that, and we do it out of patriotic duty and service to our community. So those volunteers at the firehouse on July 4th showed that volunteerism and that good spirit. So it's a positive thing. I will address the solar energy. I think Mr. Siegel's quote was there. We made a responsible energy decision as far as the CREC goes, and the CREC, it made fiscal sense back then. So I know we want to be the leaders, but it made huge sense back then. The payback was enormous, over a 30-year turnout for the building. I know Commissioner D'Amelio wouldn't have proposed it back then had it not made fiscal sense, and we will look at that again. It will make sense. I do want to lead by example, but it's got to make sense. We can't put a burden on anybody or any of us. So where it makes sense, we will lead by example, not just to do it willy-nilly, but it has to make fiscal sense to our taxpayers into there. But I tend to look at it objectively, as I think all the commissioners will, and make a rational and planned decision about what we should do in the long term. Mr. President, that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Quinn.
Well, I serve with all 8 of you, and I respect all of your views. That's what makes us a great town. And we all may not agree on things, but we can all sit down and respect each other. And one of the reasons why our town is the best is because of the police here. And over the past year, every time the chief has been asked about that flag, he has said what the flag means, and I will defend that flag. And I will, and I just wanted to say that. My plan was not to say anything tonight, but then as things went on, I had to. But yeah, I just wanted to thank the chief and know that I got your back. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Finally, it was great to, it's great to have live audiences again. It's great to get feedback in person. I would hope that in future meetings, we can be a little more respectful of each other. We can have people speaking from the audience. Unfortunately, you can't run a meeting with us trying to talk back, so for the future, okay? People are very passionate about it. we get passionate about symbols, and I understand that. I do think that we may be missing the point somewhat. There's nobody up on this board that isn't 100% supportive of our police department. There are people who have different feelings about flags. The issue is supporting the police. So I think we're there. Finally, in regards to the reassessment, just a couple of things. I think phone calls I've gotten, there's some civics lessons. We are only responsible for the township taxes. The township taxes did not go up. The school board did raise their taxes somewhat. We have no control over that. We will look into whether there's anything we can do. Again, it's a county reassessment. It wasn't something we did, but we will look into it, John. And that's all I have.
Yeah, no, no. We need to go into executive session.
Yes, that's
Want to
fine.
announce that?
Can I have a motion to adjourn now?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
So moved.